Welcome into Live Now from Fox. I'm your host, Christina Evans. We do want to continue on with some of our other top stories of the day. I want to put up this tweet here from the New York Post. 3 men accuse Diddy of drugging and raping them at New York City hotels. So what we do know is that 3 men are all suing anonymously. They say that the music mogul drugged and raped them between 2019 and 2022. One claims that the attack happened during a 2020 party at Combs's house in East Hampton. Combs's attorney accused the men of lying and deny that Combs sexually assaulted anyone. The 55-year-old, though, is currently facing federal racketeering and sex trafficking charges. He's being held in custody in Brooklyn. He has since pleaded not guilty. For more on this story and just to dive in to these new, again, sexual assault lawsuits, I want to bring in legal affairs journalist Meghann Cuniff. Meghann, thanks so much for being with us here on Live Now. We've been discussing these Diddy claims at length over the last few months. What are your thoughts of these new lawsuits?
I think it's another continuation of what we've been seeing over the last few months, and that people are really coming out of the woodworks. And of course, his attorneys are saying that these are more false claims, but we're seeing patterns develop over these allegations. I mean, these are 3 men, 3 separate incidents, but there's similarities between that and other lawsuits that we've seen. And these are also different attorneys than we've seen in the past. This is not Tony Busby, who's gotten so much attention for filing so many lawsuits against Diddy. These are other lawyers representing these men.
And I'm glad you mentioned that, again, these are very nuanced things where we're seeing the same thing over and over. In fact, in 3 of these claims, they all say that they were at a party with Puffy and his crew, and then they claim they went to hotels, and one of them actually claimed that they was raped there at his residence in the Hamptons. When you're seeing, again, the similarities between these cases, does that make it a lot more difficult for Puffy's legal team at this point to devise a way to say that none of this is true?
Perhaps, but I think the emphasis right now really is on the criminal case, because it is going to be so easy for them to get these cases stayed pending the outcome of his criminal case. That what's noticeable that they have not actually, Diddy does not have representation in the recent lawsuits that have been filed, because his attorneys are obviously focused on the criminal case. So I'm not sure how much focus from his team we're really going to see on these civil cases until we get some kind of resolution to his criminal cases.
Certainly something, of course, we know that with the criminal case, it's a lot more serious. I also want to put up this tweet that you put out a bit earlier today. This is also an update that we have in his case. We do know that he will have access to a laptop. Can you break down what the significance is of Diddy now being able to go over some of that discovery in his case?
Yes, and we've seen these requests before in federal cases involving the Metropolitan Detention Center. Judges have had to order their various defendants be given access to laptops. And there was a dispute between his attorneys and NBC about where exactly he could access a laptop and for how long. So this is the judge saying that from 8 a.m. to 3:30 p.m., 7 days a week, he's to have access to this to go over case discovery and nothing else. He's not supposed to do note taking, that kind of thing, but the computer will be equipped for him to review discovery in his own case.
And Meghann, I want to ask you, of course, we know that a big part of this case is that Diddy was actually accused of witness tampering from behind bars. Is that maybe why it took the lawyers a bit longer to be able to get him access to a laptop so he can go over the discovery in this case?
We haven't seen indications of that, because it would be standard for him to have some kind of access to that. It seems like it was just problems within the MDC and communication about what was allowed and what wasn't.
And I do want to continue on. Of course, you just mentioned his name a bit earlier, Tony Busby. He is one of the lawyers that's filing, again, massive civil case against Diddy at this point for sexual assault in different cases. And now Jay-Z's been brought into these lawsuits as well. What are your thoughts on that? Because he was recently revealed to be the second celebrity who was in the room there as in the sexual assault of a teenager. Again, this is one of those lawsuits from Tony Busby.
Yes, and Jay-Z is denying these allegations pretty vehemently. He issued a pretty strong statement Sunday night when these came out, and then his lawyers have been filing some pretty strongly worded statements in court saying that this is a sham, this is a shakedown. And it turns out actually a couple weeks before this lawsuit was filed, back on November 18th, here in Los Angeles, Jay-Z's team sued Tony Busby under a John Doe name, accusing him of extortion, saying that he'd been threatening to publicize wildly false allegations against a really famous celebrity who we now know is Jay-Z. So his team has been working on this for quite a while. And right now, the current step in federal court is whether the plaintiff, is going to have to identify herself. And we've seen previous orders in lawsuits against Diddy where the plaintiff has had to identify herself, but it's really up to the judge. And I'm wondering if all the lawsuits, all the attention, the criminal case is going to present a changed standard for some of the judges, that perhaps they'll now see that maybe there is reason for the plaintiff to remain anonymous. But right now, that's the biggest question right now for the judge in Jay-Z's case, is whether she's going to agree that the plaintiff needs to be publicly identified.
Do you think that we're going to see other celebrity names dropped here over the next few months leading up to this trial connected to Diddy? Of course, he's known for having these lavish parties, but that so many folks in Hollywood attended.
What's interesting is there is an unnamed celebrity in the complaint right now. That when the complaint was originally filed in October, it was 2 unnamed celebrities, and then when it was amended on Sunday night, they named Jay-Z. But there is still an unnamed female celebrity who allegedly witnessed this attack, and seems like either way, whoever that person is would be a good witness for either side, depending on what she says she actually saw. So everyone's anticipating some kind of identification of her eventually. But again, the case is a little complicated, because the idea that it's going to go to trial when Diddy has his own criminal case pending, him being a co-defendant in that, he has every reason to want to stay the case. Jay-Z, of course, doesn't, because he doesn't have a criminal case pending. But there could be some interesting issues arising from that.
Certainly going to be interesting and something to watch. Meghann, do you think, what's next for Diddy at this point? We do know, like you said, he's going to be going to trial at the top of next year. What is him and his legal team now focusing on these next few months?
Right now, they're really focused on the search of his jail cell and the notes that were taken from there, which a judge is still deciding whether those are covered by attorney-client privilege. And Diddy's lawyers have filed some pretty aggressive filings asking for an evidentiary hearing, and basically alleging that the government has been spying on him and really conflicting with his ability to prepare for trial. There's some, it's a pretty extensive filing, and they're asking for an evidentiary hearing that could lead to the dismissal of the indictment. I think that's unlikely, but it just shows how aggressive his counsel is being with everything. And it also shows just the complicatedness of the attorney-client privilege issues regarding his jail notes, and kind of some of the unknowns right now that the judge is sorting through.
Certainly something we're going to continue to follow here on Live Now from Fox. Of course, legal affairs journalist Meghann Cuniff here to help us break down the very latest. Meghann, thanks so much for coming on.
Thanks for having me.
All right, so we do want to continue on with